much for joining us today. I am so pleased to welcome you to today's Art New York Shareout Towards a Common Application with Erica Ray Barnes from Art New York and Emily Sprock from Howard Gilman Foundation, moderated by Danielle King. My name is Talia Corin. My pronouns are she, her, and I am one of the co-executive directors from Art New York. As a brief visual description, I am a white woman with curly light brown shoulder length hair. I'm wearing a blue and white striped button down, and I'm in front of a cream wall with blue patterned curtains, a photograph of river rocks, and a plant. As we gather this afternoon, we always begin Art New York events by offering a land acknowledgement. We would like to take this time to acknowledge that wherever we are currently located on Turtle Island, otherwise known as North America, we are on occupied territory. Art New York's membership in the 5 boroughs of New York City operates on the unceded ancestral land of the Lenape, Wappinger, Canarsie, Rockaway, and Matinecock communities. We want to honor and celebrate all of these Indigenous communities, their elders past and present, as well as future generations. We also want to take this time to acknowledge that after there was stolen land, there were stolen people. We want to honor the generations of displaced and enslaved people that built and continue to build the country that we occupy today. Since we are gathered today in virtual space, let's also take a moment to consider the legacies of colonization embedded within the technologies, structures, and ways of thinking that we use every day. We are using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many Indigenous communities. And even the technologies that are central to much of the art we make leave significant carbon footprints, contributing to changing climates that disproportionately affect Indigenous peoples worldwide. We invite you to join us in acknowledging all of this, as well as our shared responsibility to make good of this time and for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, anti-racism, and allyship. The virtual part of that land acknowledgement was written by Adrian Wong of Spiderweb Show in Ontario, Canada. We encourage you to learn more about whose land you are on by visiting http://native-land.ca. And I'll put that in the chat. Probably don't need to say the HTTP. We are so excited to have you all here. Thank you. Some notes before I turn it over to the wonderful folks that we have today. Programs Manager Nikki Maggio is here with us and can assist with any technical issues you encounter. Please use the chat to message them directly. As a reminder, you all probably saw this notification as you entered the Zoom, but this session is streaming live on HowlRound and will be available there for viewing afterwards if you wish to revisit this conversation. I also want to take a moment to thank Lisa and Stephanie, who are here providing ASL interpretation today, and Alicia, who is doing live captioning. We appreciate you all so much. Thank you for your time and your services. If you would like to access closed captioning, you can click the CC button in your Zoom menu and click Show Subtitles. Okay, there is a lot to get through today, and we won't have time to take live questions, but we invite you to follow up by email. Erica and Emily will let you know how you can be in touch at the end of the hour. And now I am so happy to turn the conversation over to Danielle, Erica, and Emily. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Talia. Hello, everyone in this Zoom room, and hello to everyone watching now and in the future on HowlRound. My name is Danielle King. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Director of Program Services at Art New York. For a brief visual description, I am a woman with fair skin. I have my brown hair pulled back and pulled up. I'm wearing a black dress, and then my background behind me is a navy blue wall with some shelves, and then like very far in the background, you see some posters and a lot of bags and a lot of clutter. We're going to go around and Emily and Erica are going to introduce themselves, and then we'll dive in. So Emily.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Emily Sprock. She, her are my pronouns, and I am a senior program officer at the Howard Gilman Foundation. I am a 46-year-old white woman with slightly wavy hair that's just past my shoulders and side swept bangs. It's brown hair. You can only really see from my shoulders up today. Behind me is a whole lot of stuff on the walls, pictures and posters, and that is almost entirely artwork by my children.
Hi, y'all. My name is Erica Ray Barnes. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Associate Director of Grants and Member Engagement at A.R.T New York. I am a white woman with raspberry glasses. I have long brown, curly at the bottom hair. I'm wearing a sage green top today, and my background is a beautiful garden of pink and maroon and green flowers. It's wallpaper. It's not real.
Thank you both. So excited to be here. All right, let's dig in. So Art New York is hosting this share out today to highlight and share more details around the development of common application questions that we're hoping will be used and are being used by funders. And this work is the result of a working group convened by New York Grantmakers in the arts from 2022 to 2025, so quite a long time. We will dig into that whole process that both Howard Gilman and A.R.T New York participated in, along with other participants. The mission of that Common Application Committee was to identify and suggest commonalities that could streamline the application experience for New York City artists and arts organizations. There's our background. Erica, Emily, can you tell us a little bit more about the impetus for that working group and what its intended purpose was?
Yes, I'm going to take this first one. So there is a network called New York Grantmakers in the Arts. It's a wonderful thing for artists and arts organizations to know just exists. Its acronym is NYGIA. And this group has been meeting for 15 years or more. It's uh it's somewhat informal, somewhat loose. It's got co-chairs and it's got some programming, but what it really is at the end of the day is an opportunity, a regular opportunity for arts funders in the New York City area to get together and talk about the issues of the day. They network, they exchange ideas, they think about ways they might be able to collaborate. Um, it's a space where, like I said, we can share ideas and talk about issues. So as you can imagine, lots of different things come up at these NYGIA meetings. And during the pandemic, one thing that kind of surfaced as everybody was working from home was, why can't we, as arts funders, come up with some sort of common application so that the applicants, whether they be individuals or organizations, don't have to keep rewriting their applications, bespoke applications, every time they are applying for money. We've heard particularly from individual artists and small arts organizations that the stress of filling out applications for funding, the time it takes, the kind of mental stress, the mental toll it takes, is really enormous. So as funders, and because we had a little bit of time to dig into kind of bigger issues when we were all home during the pandemic, um, we came together and we said, well, this is an interesting idea. It's an idea that's been floated around by the philanthropic community for decades, and there have been many, many, many versions of common applications across the country in different philanthropic sectors, in different states, in different regions, some with some success, some with very little success. But we came together as a New York arts funding community, and we said, let's put together essentially a task force around this issue. We called it a committee. We became the Common Application Committee. This committee had about 15 members from a variety of funding institutions in New York that started meeting about, once a month or so to kind of figure out, does this idea have any legs? What are the problems with this idea? What are the opportunities with this idea? Um, the topic itself gets very complicated very quickly in ways that it's hard to even imagine when you just say the word common application, which sounds so easy, right? Colleges do it. Why can't we do it in the arts? We should be able to do it tomorrow. It's not that simple. And all of these other efforts over past decades kind of show that it's been tried many times and it's actually failed more often than it has succeeded, although we see some examples of success. So I'll pause there. Erica, did you want to fill anything in?
And
No,
Erica,
yeah.
sorry, just before you, we need to just do something for the live stream really quickly. So I'm going to pause you both and hopefully we won't lose our momentum. Okay.
Now we're
Now,
spotlit.
yeah, there you go. You can tell. Lovely.
Hello.
Okay. So sorry.
No, no problem. I think, Emily, I think that overview, especially of NYGIA, is fantastic. I know you're going to go a bit more into um, the years that we sort of worked on this and talk about Bay Area. But I just want to uplift again what you read at the beginning, Danielle, in our mission, because I think that's so key to really what the goal of this committee was. And I'm going to highlight specifically it was to identify and suggest commonalities across applications, which we did. Um, and that could streamline the application experience. And I want to uplift that because, we were talking right before this live stream started about how funders and even I think applicants who have had any kind of experience with a common application are kind of like, whoa, I have a really specific idea of what that means to me. And often people are like, whoa, or applicants may be like, yeah, why not? So easy. So just sort of like highlighting, uplifting, Emily, what you just said, but that this committee really was dedicated to sort of seeing what was common across what New York City arts funders asked. And from there, come up with sort of like, it's not even totally a solution, an idea that we had that we're moving forward with. So that's all. Just want to uplift that.
Yeah.
You're doing great, Emily.
I feel like that distinction is so important, Erica. And maybe we can use this as an opportunity to dig in further of let's talk about why the work has resulted in a list of common application questions versus a common application. Yeah.
So if you start to kind of unpack what a common application is, it can actually mean several different things. So first of all, you have to think about it from like a technology perspective. What is this common application? Where does it live? Is it on some sort of collectively owned platform? Does the DCLA launch it? Like there's a hub, right? So that's already kind of complicated because most arts funders have invested many years and much work into keeping their own submission portal. And that portal is usually attached to all sorts of other work that the foundation does, which includes contact management. It includes all the data that they are collecting, aggregating, using. It usually includes payment information. And kind of connects with your accounting department to get those payments out to whoever the recipients are. So if you kind of take all of that away, you've sort of wasted a lot of time, money, and energy that has gone into building those portals for different places. And places have different needs for those portals. You also have funders that are funding such a variety of things, right? You could have one foundation that, yes, maybe does some arts funding, but they're also funding international poverty initiatives. So they have to have a database and a portal that is covering a lot of things. So real quick, you start to see how sort of the mechanics of building one common application would actually be quite tough just from a logistical point of view. We had so many conversations about this as a committee, and there might be some utopian world in the future, where this could work, but it would actually require a tremendous amount of um, digital design, and it would probably require a ton of money. And so our committee really wasn't equipped to look at that as an option. We sort of took a more grassroots approach to the question, to figure out how could we do other things that might save people a little bit of time. So if people are working within their own application system, how then might you save an individual artist's time? Well, one thing we identified is that a lot of New York arts funders are asking very similar questions. However, the questions are just ever so slightly different, that as the applicant, not only are you perhaps getting in your head about, wait, they ask it with the word impact, but this other funder asks it with the word success. How do I interpret those two different words? I got to write a totally different answer because clearly they mean something very different, when in fact, those were just two applications that were written 10 years ago by two people who might not even work in the field anymore, and there's really not too much significance behind it. So we thought if we could get people on the same page about certain questions, not only exactly the way they're phrased, but the exact suggested length, then people will have an arsenal of answers that they can cut and paste into a variety of applications. The length piece is really key here, because one funder might say, tell us about your programming in 1,000 words or less. And another funder might say, tell us about your programming in 2 paragraphs. And another funder might say, tell us about your programming in 600 characters. It's really all over the place. And some might not have any suggested length at all. So again, there's an automatic anxiety. How do I interpret that? What do they want to know more? They want to know less? How do I delete? How do I take out? So another big part of it was, some of these questions are pretty easy to ask. If we could just, agree on a suggested length and perhaps become a little less precious as a funder about what that length should be, then maybe we can start saving some folks some time.
Yeah. Oh, Erica.
Well, I don't know that I have much to add on that. So I think that's a great explanation of sort of like the impetus for what got us started on the work, was really getting the group sort of on board with, like, it's not about creating a common application, it's about creating common questions for applications.
Yeah. And immediately my mind is going into, oh my goodness, so many questions. Like there was a process where, like I would dig into the process because already I'm like, this feels so big. No
Yeah.
wonder it took 3 years, right? And a lot of talking through semantics and meaning and context and character length and criteria, all of that. So, yeah, what was it like to be in those meetings to sort through all of this?
A little painful. Like, I mean, it was very fun. But I think, and Emily, I'm thinking here, I don't want to lose the Bay Area piece, but I'll talk a
Mhm,
little bit
mhm.
about how we kind of did an audit of even just the um questions the organization from the organizations of people who were part of this committee. My predecessor here, actually at Art New York, Corrine Woods, put together, she loved an Airtable, put together an Airtable that had quite a few organizations and foundations submit their narrative questions and a number of other questions as well. But we decided we were going to focus on narrative questions. Um, and, there's an entire sort of section dedicated to like, what is the way we all ask for mission statements? So we gathered, like that data had already been gathered for us. I think we resent the poll out again, got a few more people to submit the questions that they're using. And then we met in person as a committee about a year and a half ago now. And we I sort of led us through this like very simple exercise that's like the first question we're going to address as a group is mission statement, to which around the table, understandably, everyone thought, okay, well, you're asking for a mission statement. But what we found is that there were like 9 different ways of even asking for mission statement. Some folks said, what is your mission statement? Tell us about your mission statement, or tell us about your mission statement, vision, programs, programming, and it was embedded in something else. Which again, speaking to what Emily was talking about then as an applicant, you're going, do they really just want my mission statement, or is there something else I need to put around the mission statement? So like those very small things causing anxiety in an applicant where we don't need anxiety to be. We just need your mission statement, right? Um, and so that was sort of the model we used. We went very slowly. I think that day we met for like 2 hours and we made it through literally like 3 questions where we were like, where should we land? There was a separate part of the committee that met together that were super excited about wordsmithing and staying pretty like streamlined in how to ask things. Those questions went through many revisions to land where we've landed with our suggested narrative questions. But Emily, unless you want to add anything else, the piece I'm thinking about is like, we didn't totally come up with this idea all on our own. We had a really great example in the Bay Area, but I'm going to let Emily talk about that relationship.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. It's so similarly during COVID, some foundations, some arts foundations in the Bay Area came together, and you know, we're having very similar conversations to the ones we were having over on the East Coast, and they were hearing from their constituents like, this is taking a lot of time. What can you do to streamline? Are you funders even talking to one another? Are you communicating? That kind of thing. Um, and funders do communicate, which is why I want everyone to know that NYGIA exists. They do communicate, but I don't think it's always obvious to, the ecosystem that funders do try to work together when they can. So in the Bay Area, they definitely were way further ahead of us New Yorkers in this work, and they've done a tremendous job. You can all go to their website if you just Google Bay Area Common Application for the Arts. Um, they kept their initial launch pretty tight. It was 3 funders that came together again during the pandemic, and kind of worked through things just the way we're talking about here. They thought, can we develop a list of questions that we agree enough on with lengths that we agree enough on? And can we essentially like just swap out what is on our current application in our own portal? Again, there's no magical like one portal out there. Can we just go into our own application portal, cut what's there, and paste this new thing? All three of us paste this new thing. And it's not like you can't also ask a bespoke question that speaks to your foundation. That is allowed. They say in the Bay Area, I think they try and say, keep it around 90-10, right? 90% of it, keep this common stuff we've developed. 10%, ask your special question that pertains just to your foundation. And they were able to launch it with these three foundations, and the work there has grown, and other funders have joined in that effort. So they were our sort of mentors and heroes during this process, and we looked toward their work quite a bit, and we looked at their questions, which were developed over time and with the help of a consultant. And we borrowed a lot of them and then tweaked them for what we thought we needed in New York. So the questions are not exactly the same, but they're similar because at the end of the day, when you are an arts funder, there's kind of just a certain number of things you want to know. It's not wildly different. You want to know about the programming, you want to know about the history, you want to know about the artist and their statement. So, but I do want to make sure everybody knows that we use their questions as a base for then the questions that we develop. So we owe them, quite a bit.
Yay. I just wanted to we love not reinventing the wheel, right? And really like leaning on others for the work that has come before us, and building that up, and moving on from there. So it's lovely to see. And I think what is also lovely to see, in my opinion, is just you both have talked about the emotion and the anxiety and the time and effort that artists and arts organizations that is required of humans in order to apply for funding to do the work that they are, to do the work that is the point of this whole thing. And so I just really appreciate that really human-centered approach to all of this work. And now I want to talk about, okay, that was 3 years of work. Now we have these questions that the committee has developed. Is there a place, can you talk a little bit about the questions? Where can we find these questions? Are they available somewhere?
Yeah. So this is really a grassroots effort. I mean, this is just a handful of people moving this work forward. So we do not have anything as formal as a website yet or anything like that. But we have developed sort of a packet of materials that kind of explain what this experiment is. I'm happy to email that packet of materials to anyone who wants to take a look at it. That's kind of where we're at tech-wise. We've developed, is it 4 sets of questions based on the different kinds of funding that you might be, as a funder, you might provide. So one set of questions is for organizations, and it's for an application for general operating support for organizations. So that's one type of funding. Then we have a set of questions for organizational project support, which is a different type of funding. And then, sorry, there were only 3. Then we have a set of questions for individual artist project support, because typically we don't see individual artists getting some version of general operating support, although that does exist in some places. But you can already see there's different type of some funding. So even within our common questions, we've had to break it down into different categories. So there are folks who are experimenting with putting these questions into their applications right now. You're going to see one question in the Gilman application in 2026. You're going to see many more of these questions in Art New York's application, which I'll turn it over to Erica to
joining us today that are like in this like live room with us today. There is a a mixture of folks who are calling in that are funders, who are at organizations and foundations. And there's a lot of applicants, like as people were coming in, there's a lot of familiar faces coming in, right? So just, to clarify for especially the applicants in the room, we are doing this work, like Danielle uplifted, for you. We hear you. We have heard you. We know how complicated and emotional this can be when you're just really wanting to focus all your time on your creative practice and your work. But I want to say, like, our call to action is not to you, applicants. Our call to action is to funders and organizations to adopt these questions, right? So when Emily, and later when we talk about emailing us, I mean, great, applicants can email us too, but we're specifically looking for partnerships of like organizations, funders, foundations to adopt these questions. But now I'll talk about a little bit about what Art New York is doing with the questions, which does apply to you applicants, because if you are applying for an Art New York grant this year, which they open Tuesday, October 7th, plug 2025, if you're watching this sometime in the way future, there's a lot of questions that we have adopted at Art New York for this year's application. So I'm going to look at my notes over here just because I want to get this right. The thing you do need to know about Art New York grants, since Emily just went through and told you there's 3 different sort of like major focuses that these questions have, is Art New York offers predominantly GOS, so general operating support. We don't offer grants to individual artists, and we don't really offer project grants. We have one that we run, but for the most part, we offer general operating support for organizations. So every question that the Common Application Committee suggested for organizations for narrative questions, we have adopted at Art New York, which I'm really excited about for a number of reasons. One, it was not to be like hair flip, it's so easy, but it was pretty easy. Our evaluation criteria has not changed around our applications, and most of the questions that were created fit neatly into that evaluation criteria. So even if folks who have applied for Art New York grants in the past notice that the questions are worded slightly differently, it's all leading to the same evaluation criteria, meaning I did not have to change anything on the back end about how our panelists will evaluate the answers to these questions. I imagine for some folks, if they don't see this live stream or if they don't come to office hours and chat with me and they just open the application, they're going to be like, whoa, this is a little different than it's been in past years. So there might be a little bit of pushback, but what I'm excited about is that even with maybe the number of questions changing, the intent and the mission and what we're looking for in terms of evaluation criteria hasn't changed. And in fact, the hope is that more and more, as more and more funders adopt these questions, you then can take the Art New York questions, if you apply with us, from this year and use them in future years when other funders and organizations sign on. That said, I am a person who enjoys, and I think like within the field, within the granting field, there's some excitement around always trying to like look at questions and tinker with them and make sure that they are specific enough and actually not leaving you in a place of anxiety when you're answering. So not to say that these questions won't change a little bit, but here in the beginning, I'm excited to include what the committee has suggested. Another thing I'll mention is that the committee came up with, do we need to pause?
No, we're good. We can keep going.
Okay, great, thanks. The committee came up with some boilerplate language for funders and organizations to use within their applications if they have decided to use any of our narrative questions. So, applicants you will see in the Howard, if you're applying for Howard Gilman and you're applying for an Art New York grant, which you may or may not be able to do, but you will see that there's a little boilerplate language that says something like every question that has this particular little symbol next to it is part of the NYGIA Common Application Narrative Questions. So, as that's the way our applicants will be able to tell if these questions are indeed ones that they can sort of save for later to cut and paste into other applications. I think that's all I want to say about that. Do you have any questions?
Exactly what I was going to ask you is how can people who are writing these grants understand which questions are part of this so that they can make a note to craft the best response to that particular question they can, and then copy paste it into other applications, and start to save some time on that. It might require, I think, a little bit of time on the front end, right, to really hone the answer to that question if it feels like that's necessary, and then hopefully the time required will start to decrease. I guess the other question I have for you, Erica, with your grant maker hat on, is, what other guidance, and also Emily, what other guidance do you all have for people who are going to develop their answers to these questions to use in these applications, so that they feel compelling and specific enough, and are, feeding into the criteria that particular grant will be reviewed under, but also is, transferable?
Emily, I think you were going to take this question, but
Yeah.
I did want to say, something on, I don't know, it'll come back to me. Emily, you start talking and then I'm sure it'll come right back into my brain.
Well, I think this is a very interesting question because there's the anxiety that we've identified in terms of applicants feeling like they have to put so much time, energy, resources, and emotional turmoil into filling out all of these different bespoke applications all over the city. But there's also another anxiety that we discovered, and we discovered this through kind of convening different cohorts to talk about feedback about our ideas, grant writers and nonprofit organizations and the like, artists. And the kind of other side of that coin, of that anxiety, is but wait, we talk to all of our funders differently. We don't want to talk to all of our funders in the same voice. And so that's really interesting. There again, it's like there's the utopian version of this, and then there's the realistic version of this. So, in the most perfect of all worlds, would you be able to talk to all funders in the same way and not have to twist yourself into pretzels to get funding? Yes, I think so. But there's also some realism and let's move forward without making this whole thing perfect. So, I think there's you have to think about your relationships with your funders. If you are an established organization and you're getting routine funding every year and you've developed a very specific relationship with specific people at specific foundations, then you're kind of on one track and there might be one answer for you. If you're kind of new to the application scene, or you're a really small organization, or you're just starting to apply for grants, you probably don't even have that yet. So, come up with some really great answers and plug them in and see how it goes. For those that are really worried about their specific relationships with foundations, I mean, the way I think of it is, you could have two large general operating support funders in the city that fund, this is Art New York, so we'll say theater companies, right, that provide general operating support to theater companies. One of those foundations might fund general operating support, but behind the scenes, they're really into arts education. Like that, they love hearing about that. And the other funder also funds general operating support at your theater company, but don't love hearing about arts education as much, and they really love hearing about what playwrights you're programming, right? That's what gets them going, right? So, okay, you want to put your best foot forward with these different foundations. Maybe you will have to tweak the way you answer. Or if your relationships with these foundations are strong enough and you've been, developing these relations over time, maybe you can have a conversation about that. Like, you're using this common question. I'd like, you're inviting me to cut and paste the answer in this application. I'm going to use my common answer. Let's acknowledge that when we talk, we lean more into the education piece, or when we talk, we lean more into the development piece, or whatever it is. I think it provides an opportunity for a little bit more transparency and kind of open dialogue. In the best of all possible worlds, it would. But I don't want to skate over the fact that this is another anxiety that people have, and we should be sensitive to it.
Yeah.
I also just want to add, like, y'all, this is super like beta stage. We had been doing this like talk about it work for 3 years. And we as a committee were also starting to be like, okay, what are we gonna do about it? Um, so we have launched and it is imperfect, right? So this sort of Emily is talking about like utopia versus reality, but also like we're in that stage a little bit of like go before you're ready. So we're going. Um, and I think, in the future, like this, we don't even have a website yet, like we talked about. We're hoping to sort of have like a landing page where some of this information will just exist. That also might be a place where applicants in the future can see what those common questions might be. But we have decided to act instead of keeping it, in the sort of like thought experiment idea space. We've decided that we need to try it, which is where we are. So there's also a world where, just to add on to what Emily is saying, where you may not even have to bring that to the funder, but instead the funder is able to go, yes, we're using these common questions. We have this different bespoke question that helps you like address, the uh, education support that we so like to hear about it. But it's very early stages, y'all. So like we're just getting rolling. So we're gonna learn and figure out and hopefully make some changes as we go and as more people sign on.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing to that. Again, this like utopia versus reality. I mean, in the best of all possible worlds, would 15 funders have all signed on to adopt all of these questions at once and launch? That would be amazing. That is really technically impossible for most funders. There's things to contend with, like different grant making schedules at each organization, when they do their grants, when they are even able to employ the team that makes changes to their applications. Usually that work is farmed out to a tech company. There's so many hurdles. We could talk about those all day. But what we're hoping is that there can be just kind of like an organic, I'm going like this, like I'm thinking of a little seeping out, a little bit of growth. Oh, I noticed you had this comment in your applications at Art New York about how this is part of some common questions. Now another funder notices it. Hey, maybe I could use one of those questions next year. And then you've got an applicant talking to another funder. Did you know that this? So if it just kind of organically kind of inches its way out, I actually think we can get further quicker than trying to do it in a big way all at once perfectly, because foundations, for better or for worse, and for many reasons, do have to move slow. And so we don't want to just wait around for that perfect moment.
Yeah. Is there other guidance you would want to offer to funders who are maybe they're listening in right now, considering implementing these questions, or just sort of considering how to start to think about this?
Well, one thing for sure is that if you want to be part of this and jump in and give it a try. It's all an experiment. You have to, if you're putting our name on it, if you're saying this is part of the New York Grantmakers in the Arts, NYGAA, common application question effort, then that means you have to use the question exactly as we wrote it with the exact suggested length. If you take these questions and say, oh, this is a good question, but I'm going to change these 2 words, you have missed the point of the entire exercise. And that can happen very fast. The conversation quickly veers in that direction when you're talking to funders. The point of this is that you're asking it the exact same way, the exact suggested length. That is it. So that's my #1 suggestion to funders. You don't have to use all the questions. You could just use 1. You could use 5. You could use 10. You can put your own bespoke questions in there. I said at Gilman, we're trying it out. We're putting 1 question in. We're just giving it a try. We ask all of our old, usual questions, so it doesn't feel scary. It's an experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. And what does the committee have plans to sort of like get feedback from those who are implementing the questions, reconvene, reassess? What are the next steps there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Art New York, we are taking on the bulk of asking the most questions. And I will add, we still do have bespoke questions as well. We have adopted all of the suggested narrative questions, but then the application also includes at least 1 extra, or maybe 2 bespoke questions that we still kept in order to meet our evaluation criteria. Um, but yeah, I mean, also like the great thing about Art New York applicants, Art New York members is they're very vocal about what they like and what they don't like. So I will hear, I'm sure, from several people about, what this experience is like over the next year. Again, we don't open until Tuesday, so we are just about to launch. And then I think I and folks who, because there are a couple of other organizations who have adopted between, 1 to 3 questions that are going to be using those. So some of you as applicants out there might see that sort of blurb that says this is a question that's part of this larger experiment initiative. But I think as an applicant, you're not going to see it widely across applications right now. It's just not at that stage. But our hope, yeah, is to sort of track what we learn over the next year and come back together. Also, NYGIA meets about quarterly. And so all of the folks, it was not just Emily and I on this committee. It was a big group effort on this committee. So pretty much any chance we get at the NYGIA meetings to be like, hi, common application. We created those questions. Want to use them? So we've got one coming up in October in which we'll sort of, I think, give an update, and there might be funders listening today from the NYGIA to see this initiative being launched, but also continuing to share out what we learn. And then, yeah, I think also making changes as we go, as we can, as we learn more about what this is or isn't doing.
In the Bay Area, not only did they create narrative questions, but they also created common financial requirements. So sort of they created a common budget template and other kind of financial pieces. They worked on some common demographic questions. So, that's like a whole nother part of this that could materialize in the future. I think it's just critical that we keep track of any funder who is using these questions. So if this, packet of information gets out there, that's great. We want it to get out there, but it is imperative that anyone who is engaging with it email us so we can keep track of you and, kind of convene people after a certain amount of time and see how things are going. So that'd be great. Just keep in close touch. And the Common Application Committee will keep kind of the wheels turning behind the scenes.
Amazing. I want to go back to something that was mentioned briefly and be a little bit more specific. You mentioned that the process of creating these application questions also included feedback from funders, organizations, artists. Can you talk a little bit more about that, just to understand who was participating and feeding back on this process?
That was I mean, I don't know that I was part of those sort of gatherings, like initially, Emily.
Early on, we got some grant writers in the room, sort of independent grant writers that do a lot of grant writing for small organizations. Um, and then we talked to all of the borough arts councils. We obviously surveyed all of the arts grant makers that are part of the New York Grantmakers in the Arts cohort, which is it has about 300 members. And then we talked to a variety of arts organizations when we were pretty far into the work saying, okay, like we're starting to develop these questions. Here they are. This is kind of the way it would work. Does this make sense to you? What is this bringing up for you? That kind of thing. So there were sort of like different checkpoints along the way when we were checking in with people.
Got it. Great, thank you. What we're moving into the last couple minutes. Anything else, Emily and Erica, that you feel like you want to emphasize or didn't get to share?
I mean, I don't know. I've said it many times throughout throughout our time today. Like, this is a grassroots effort. This was a result of people we've talked to over the years asking, why can't we have a common application, or why isn't the focus, it seems, on the applicant themselves? And um, it was the impetus for the entire thing, is it trying to focus on ease for the applicant, and um, not the focus being put on the funders or the organizations or the foundations, but also understanding that as a volunteer committee, trying to like come up with an idea to ask of people to join us, that we had to be really thoughtful about both sides, but always at the core of what was driving, like moving the questions forward or how to participate, was what will be the applicant experience, what could lead to the best applicant experience. But so that's, I think, the great news. It's centered, it's true, it's human forward. The bad news is it's going to take time. It's going to take time, y'all. Like, it is not going to happen overnight. All of these funders and organizations and foundations are even if we come together 4 times a year to chat, they're separate, like Emily has talked about. So anything happening quickly or by next year is just not a reality. But we did feel like it was important to get started. So we are excited to launch and be started and continue to track this and see what happens, and hopefully like spread it further.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very exciting work that I think I want to thank both of you for your many hours of effort in that, as well as the other members of the committee. And it's very exciting that we're launching our grants on Tuesday. People will get to see these questions.
Yeah.
And otherwise, if you'll just lift up again, if people are interested about this, how do they reach you? How do they find the materials that have been generated?
At this point, I would encourage anyone interested in speaking further just to email me directly. So I think someone is going to be putting that email address in the chat, but it is eSprock, and you can see the way my last name is spelled on the screen, at howardgilmanfoundation.org. And I just think, like, if I had a vision for success, I mean, I just think of like this small theater company. Again, this is Art New York, so we'll talk about theater companies. I'm picturing this small theater company in my mind with a modest $100,000 budget, applying for the handful of grants that are available to an organization of that size. There's not that many, right? Let's say there's 5 grants you can apply to. in New York City, if you are a small theater company. If those 5 funders, whether it's Art New York and one of the borough arts councils and, the 2 or 3 independent foundations that would fund somebody at that level, if all 5 of those ask mostly the same questions, that's probably 25 to 30 hours of time saved for that applicant. That's people agonize over these applications. They really go through them and over them, and they have other people read them. So if those answers were written once and you were able to send those to only just 5 other funders, to me, that is a win. That is a success for this entire program. The icing on the cake that Erica always brings up would be if then that small company grows and then at a certain point in its trajectory is eligible for other funding opportunities at larger foundations. If those foundations are now using the same questions, when that small company gets a little bit bigger and moves into another kind of a funding arena, they're not starting from square one, and it's not unfamiliar. The anxiety of like, oh, now I'm applying to the big foundation is kind of stripped away because we are all sharing these common questions. So that's my vision for the future. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
And it doesn't mean as applicants, you don't have to change or update your answers every couple of years. Your focus changes, you grow. There's in no world are you going to be like, here's my forever cut and paste answer. Like, no, you still have to rewrite and respond and talk about the evolution of your company. But yeah, you would then be able to sort of do that alongside the questions staying the same, and you just get to feature and focus on the changes that you are tracking in your own organization or as an artist.
As someone has put in the chat, Viva la Common app. I'll say Viva la Common application. Application questions. Thank you both so much for your time and your enthusiasm and your heart around this work. And thanks to everyone for joining us today.
Yeah.
You have a lovely, lovely day.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye,
Take
y'all.
care. Bye-bye.